Ooh, it's a mini review. Beat 'em and Eat 'em was a 1982 release by Mystique for the Atari 2600. One of the famous porn games on the system, Beat 'em and Eat 'em is a paddle game where you play as two nude women with open mouths catching, let's call it mayonnaise, falling from above. If you let any of it hit the ground, you lose a life. If you catch every drop in a level, the women lick their lips and you advance to the next stage to start all over again. Even better, you get an extra life every time you get 69 points. Nice. Beat 'em and Eat 'em is really just a crappy version of Kaboom with a naughty theme. Great for a collection, but you probably don't want your spouse to catch you playing. 4 out of 10. Mini review. Burgertime was a 1982 release by M Network for the Atari 2600. A port of the popular arcade game by Data East, Burgertime has you playing as Chef Peter Pepper navigating an array of platforms, trying to build burgers while avoiding murderous ingredients that chase you. This ladder-filled kitchen isn't a very sanitary one though, because the way you assemble them is by walking over each layer to make it fall to the plates below. If one of the foods chasing you is on or under a burger when it falls, it'll be destroyed and another will replace it. If you get trapped, you can use pepper to stun enemies briefly by pressing the button. You only have a limited amount of these though. Burgertime is an awesome game, but despite it being functional, this port is pretty rough. 6 out of 10. Mini review. Chase the Chuckwagon was a 1983 release by Spectravision for the Atari 2600. A promotional game for Purina dog food, Chase the Chuckwagon was only available through mail order. You play as a dog trying to get to the Chuckwagon at the top of the screen before the time limit expires. Each of the 4 mazes has 2 obstacles to keep you from accomplishing your goal. The first is the dog catcher. He wanders each screen, and if he gets you, you lose a life. The second is a bouncing object that roams each level. If it touches you, you'll be unable to move for a short time. Between each level, a dish of dog food drops, and if you can catch it, you'll get bonus points. Chase the Chuckwagon isn't bad per se, but it's a pretty one-dimensional experience, and more of a collectible than anything else. 4 out of 10. Mini review. Dark Cavern was a 1982 release by M Network for the Atari 2600. A port of Intellivision's Night Stalker, Dark Cavern has you trapped in a maze with murderous spiders and robots pursuing you. Unlike most games of the era, you have limited ammunition to deal with these enemies. Sometimes a gun icon will pop up on the screen for a limited period. If you grabbed in time, you'll add 10 rounds to your ammunition. The spider enemies roam the maze and are comparatively harmless, but the robots are fast and shoot back. In fact, they shoot the instant they see you, so it's best to either quickly shoot and get out of the way, or sneak up behind them to take them out. In addition to these two, there's this blob that roams the screen. It won't kill you, but if you walk through it, you'll lose ammo. Fight wave upon wave until you lose all your lives. Dark Cavern doesn't have the same atmosphere as Night Stalker, but it's fun to play nonetheless. 7 out of 10. Mini review. Fantastic Voyage was a 1982 release by Fox Video Games for the Atari 2600. A game based on the 1966 film of the same name, Fantastic Voyage sets you as a shrunken submarine traveling through the arteries of a medical patient with blood clots. The goal here is to pass through each stage, destroying the bad cells in the blood while avoiding the good ones in the arterial walls. At the bottom of the screen is a heart monitor. Every time you crash into a wall, shoot something you shouldn't, or let bad cells pass you, the patient's condition worsens. Make it through all the stages to destroy the clot, to then return to the first stage and start over at a higher difficulty. Fantastic Voyage is often misunderstood by people who think they have to just shoot everything, and I think it deserves more credit for being a solid shooter. 7 out of 10. Mini review. Joust was a 1983 release for the Atari 2600. A port of the popular arcade game, in Joust you play as a knight on a large bird called a buzzard in an arena battling other buzzard riders. Press the button to flap your wings and fly, and then collide with your opponents to fight them. When you hit another jouster, whoever is higher will be victorious. When you successfully beat one of them, they'll turn into an egg that you then need to grab in order to gain points and make sure that the rider doesn't return. If you don't catch the egg in time, your opponent will hatch and return, but stronger. You'll have to fight them again. Defeat all your foes to advance to the next wave, and repeat. Eventually, there will be exposed fire pits on either side of the lower ledge, adding to the danger, as well as a pterodactyl that you'll want to avoid because the only way to destroy it is to hit it directly on its beak. Play until you lose all your lives, or take on a friend in 2-player mode. Joust is a fantastic game, and the 2600 port lives up to the spirit of the original. 9 out of 10. Mini review. Lock and Chase was a 1982 release by M Network for the Atari 2600. A port of the arcade and Intellivision games of the same name, Lock and Chase pits you as a master thief evading police while stealing coins and other treasures. This is a Pac-Man style game with a twist. As you move through the maze, you can close doors behind you to give your pursuers a slip. Simply press the button as you move past the black lines on the screen, and a temporary barrier will close behind you. You can only have 2 doors closed at a time though. Periodically, treasure worth bonus points will pop up in the center of the screen. Once you collect all the coins in any given stage, the door at the top of the maze opens for you to escape. Play stage after stage for points until you lose all your lives. Lock and Chase is one of those maze games that adds to the gameplay of Pac-Man, and although simple, I really like it. 8 out of 10. Mini review. Math Grand Prix was a 1982 release for the Atari 2600. An educational game, Math Grand Prix has 1 or 2 players answer math questions in order to advance through the circuit. First, you select how many spaces you'd like to move, and then you have to answer either addition, subtraction, multiplication, or division in order to successfully execute that move. When cars land on the same space, the car that comes from behind will knock the other off the track, and you'll have to answer a question to get back in the race. In most game modes, there are also icons on the track that will give you bonus turns or push you forward extra spaces. For an educational game, Math Grand Prix isn't bad, and can actually be fun for a game or two, but the enjoyment is very short-lived. 3 out of 10. It's a mini review! Millipede was a 1984 release for the Atari 2600. A port of the popular arcade game, and a sequel to Centipede, Millipede is a fast-paced shooter where you'll be evading an onslaught of spiders, bees, beetles, and other bugs, including millipedes. Like its predecessor, the gameplay here is chaotic. In fact, here it's dialed up to 11. Move your player around the lower portion of the screen with a joystick and fire with a button. Every time you successfully hit the millipede, the part you hit will turn into a mushroom. And when the millipede hits a mushroom, it will reverse direction. Mushrooms hinder your movement and hasten the millipedes, so you'll have to keep on top of them as well. A variety of other creepy crawlies will also move around the screen, some even in swarms, and touching anything other than a mushroom will kill you. Thankfully, there are pesticide bombs scattered throughout the garden, and if you shoot them, they explode, killing everything in their blast radius. Survive as long as you can to get a high score before losing all your lives. Millipede is a pretty impressive port for the system, and it's a lot of fun even today. 8 out of 10. Mini review. Pooyan was a 1983 release by Konami for the Atari 2600. A port of the arcade game of the same name, Pooyan has you playing as Mama Pig saving her little piglets, or Pooyans, from a pack of hungry wolves. Pooyan has 2 stages, both of which have you hanging from a rope on the right, shooting arrows or bait. To the left of you, in stage 1, you'll have wolves descending from the top platform with balloons. Pop them with your arrows, or grab the bait that occasionally appears at the top to throw it and hit multiple enemies. Be careful though, they will throw rocks at you and even try to shield their balloons. If a wolf makes it to the bottom, it'll climb the side of your home and try to get you, making one more thing for you to avoid. In the second stage, the wolves are trying to get to the top. Shoot them down to prevent this, as if enough wolves get to the top, they'll push a boulder down onto you. I've never been a big fan of Pooyan, but this is a solid port and it looks and sounds good for the 2600. 7 out of 10. Mini review. QBert was a 1983 release by Parker Brothers for the Atari 2600. A port of the popular arcade game, QBert has you hopping from platform to platform on a pyramid trying to change their colors. While you do this, several enemies will join the playfield with you and you'll have to avoid them. To help you in this, there are 2 elevators, one at either side of the level. That will help you escape by taking you to the top of the pyramid if you jump on them. The big gimmick in this game is the controls. Since QBert is moving through a pseudo 3D environment, his moves are diagonal, although you control him by moving the standard up, down, left, and right. Tilting your joystick 45 degrees to the right lines things up, but I still find it difficult. Clearly, I don't play QBert enough. This is a solid port for the system, and if you're a fan of the game, you should like this one just fine. 7 out of 10. Mini review. Video Pinball was a 1981 release for the Atari 2600. Video Pinball is exactly what it sounds like, a video game version of pinball. Pull your joystick back to pull the plunger, and then press the button to launch the ball. Once the ball is in play, move the joystick to the left or right to operate the flippers at the bottom of the screen. You can also press up to activate both flippers at the same time. Like the real thing, you can also nudge the table by holding the button and moving your joystick to the side. Nudging too much will result in a tilt though. Video Pinball is a solid game, despite it being an earlier release for the system, and is still fun to play today, although I prefer Bumper Bash and Midnight Magic personally. 6 out of 10. Mini Review! Warlords was a 1981 release for the Atari 2600. A port of the arcade game of the same name, Warlords is a paddle game for up to 4 players. There are 4 competitors playing as a shield, guarding their king from a fireball bouncing around the screen. Each playing in one of the 4 corners, use your shield to bounce a fireball into your opponent's walls, breaking your way through to their king. If the fireball hits anyone's king, that player is eliminated. When the fireball hits your shield, you can catch it by holding the button. This way you can move to a better position to try and outmaneuver other players. Warlords is hands down my favorite paddle game for the system, and with 4 players is unmatched fun. 10 out of 10. Mini Review! Zaxxon was a 1983 release by Coleco for the Atari 2600. A port of the arcade game, in Zaxxon you play as a starfighter battling your way through alien bases in a pseudo-3D environment. Gone from this version is the orthographic perspective that made the game famous. Instead, we're flying straight ahead with sprite scaling to simulate 3 dimensions. The core gameplay is based on your ability to change your altitude by moving the joystick up and down to navigate your environment and position yourself to shoot enemies. Despite the altitude meter on the left side of the screen, this can be difficult to master and makes the game pretty frustrating at times. It's far from a bad game, but it's also not great. 6 out of 10.